how you doing? How you been?
I've been doing well. I've been busy, but it's good to be home for the weekend this week. But man, everything's going great right now.
You launched a supplement company, right? Last year, I
Yeah,
think.
granted. Well, we launched in. We're on year three now. Um, Last year, or actually last month, was the best month we've ever had. I mean, that's what you would hope, right? The business builds. But so last month was the best month we've ever had, and we're making some good headway. I think it's a tough industry, obviously. So it's taken us a little bit of time to get moving, but everything's going well now.
I was going to ask you, man. It seems like the supplement industry is very oversaturated with so many different companies starting startups, advanced companies, huge companies. But how you compete with them? What is your master plan here?
Well, my master plan is a little bit different. I've never been the get rich quick kind of guy, which is it is popular with some other supplement companies. As you know, I think it took me 15, 16 tries to get my pro card. Everything I do seems to take me a little bit of time. But one of the things that I've tried to do over the past few decades is just treat people right. It's just act with integrity and try to let people know I look out for their best interests and do the right thing. And that absolutely gives me a benefit in this case because there's a lot of people who know me well, that support me, and that are happy to do so. So, if I say I'm going to do something and make a good product, they know it's going to be good. And I've never been the cheap guy either. So, if somebody's looking for a $20 pre-workout, I'm just not your guy. So that's what everything's always been about me. My training programs, I mean, everything I've done, I'd rather take my time, do it right, treat people right. It's kind of the long way to do business, but that's okay. That's okay. It's worked out great for me, so I'm very happy.
I hear some guys in the industry they preach kind of the saying all the supplements is just all fake. You know what I mean? Just eat, go train, eat, go train. When you hear stuff like that, what do you think? What is your response to that?
I don't blame them one bit. I mean, there's been so much crap that's out there. I mean, everything from protein spiking to these super high stimulant pre-workouts that the terms crack people out. So there's a lot of poor products out there, and so I don't blame them one bit. So when I hear that, I think, yeah, man, I know where you're coming from. And the only thing I can do is just try to build a good product and have them try it. We just launched a protein powder, and I personally have issues digesting protein powders. I can get the cleanest whey isolate, and it still upsets my stomach. So I just took 6 months to put together a formula, get the digestive enzymes right to where it doesn't upset your stomach. So, doing things like that goes a long way with people. Then once they see, wow, man, how did you do that? Then they think, okay, well, this guy actually does put some work into this.
Now you mentioned protein powder spiking, right? Is that actually when? Because I heard a lot about that as well on different instances on the news. Is that actually when what do they spike the protein with? Like they actually put like
It,
steroids in it? Like what do they do with it?
no, it's not spiking like that. It's, you claim a certain amount of amino acids. And rather than put the right essential amino acids in it, you might put a bunch of one cheap amino acid in it just to keep it simple. So it's very misleading. And I don't know that it happens much now, but I mean when you see protein powder is not cheap. So when you see a company that's selling, a 3, 4, 5 pound bag and it's dirt cheap, like I know how much protein costs. So I'm thinking that's not right. Like they're losing money. If they really pay what I think they're paying, then they're losing money. So it's just a matter of trying to trick the system. But fortunately, that stuff I don't think it happens so much anymore.
But
Um,
there was a case basically, I think it was 2 years ago, where it was an MMA fighter that failed a
oh yeah,
drug
yeah, yeah.
test because he was taking some supplements by a company. You heard about that?
Vaguely. I don't remember what it was, or I don't really remember the details. Who knows who puts what in what anymore? All I can do is just focus on what we're doing. You know.
So you focused on putting the best ingredients in your products, granted, right?
Absolutely.
So what's the best kind of protein? You mentioned protein. What's the best kind of protein? Is it whey protein? Is it they make I think like beef protein, right? Carnivore protein, and
Uh
there's
huh.
a plant-based protein. What's the best kind? Can you teach me about that?
You know what? It depends on what your goals are. A lot of people like to say, well, whey concentrate is inferior to whey isolate. Well, you do realize it comes from the same source, right? The only difference is the isolate's a little more processed. They pull out the lactose and things like that. They're both really good proteins. Casein, maybe it's not quite as high in leucine, but it's still a really good protein. Plus, it's slow digesting, sticks with you longer. There's nothing more frustrating than, you drink a protein shake and 45 minutes later you're starving again. I'm like, man, that wasn't fun. And then you got the old school egg proteins and beef proteins. The beef proteins are a little lean, like things like that help your more like your skin and your nails and things like that. So I personally like a blend. I built a whey casein blend that has egg and beef in with it also. The majority is whey casein because I think that mixture is really good. But so I personally like the blends, so that's why I came out with a blend.
Mm-hmm. How did you get into bodybuilding in the first place, John? Why did you decide to get into that sport?
Probably pretty unique. So 12 years old, I opened up a muscle and fitness magazine, and as soon as I looked at the pictures, I said, I'm going to be a pro bodybuilder someday. As soon as I saw the pictures in the magazine, I knew that's exactly what I wanted to do. So I spent many, many years to achieve that. So, yeah, but it was real simple from a young age. I never really wavered.
Mm-hmm. So, where are you from originally? Where were you born? Where?
I'm from a town. I live in Columbus, Ohio now. I'm from a little small town called Washington Courthouse, which is about 60 minutes south of here.
So when you got into bodybuilding, right, and obviously your parents or your family or whoever was with you at the time, were they looking at you like you were crazy, putting on posing trunks, going on stage? Was that kind of like a abnormal thing in the place where you were from to kind of get into to kind of bodybuilding and kind of going through with it?
Yeah, so it was a small town, and there was only a handful of bodybuilders that were competing there. But I was really young. I think that's what freaked people out. I competed at 13 years old. So if you can think about most 13-year-olds, like my kids are 11 years old. I can't imagine them competing in a bodybuilding show in 2 years. So, I was 13 years old, so it was very weird. People at school thought it was weird. But you know what? It wasn't like I don't feel like people put me down or anything like that. They just thought, oh man, that's a little different. I never felt like people looked down on me or anything. They just thought, wow, and I was in track and football and wrestling, and I was in all these other sports as well. But yeah, a little different starting out when you're 13 years old and really been involved with it.
Right. So what do you think about this big debate that's happening right now? Old school training versus new school training, new age bodybuilding. Well, some people say in the 90s bodybuilding was way better, people are better conditioned, better, better bodies in general than now. Some people say no, now it's better. Where's your stand on this?
Well, I have my opinion is formed from actually being there. I've seen the competitors in the 80s and the 90s, the 2000s, the 2010s, however you name that. But I actually have seen them in person. I have firsthand experience with all those decades. I just think it's a little different. Like what you saw, like first of all, I think the genetics, when you look at the guys like Flex Wheeler and Ronnie Coleman and Kevin Levrone, you're talking about elite genetics. It seems like that decade had these guys with incredible genetics. And I loved all those guys. Flex was my favorite for many, many years from that era. And you see the guys now, and I think the guys now are they're bigger. If you just look at weight, physical weight, they're bigger. I look at it as just different eras. Like when I look at the older era, I see a little more muscle separation. I see a little bit more streamlined to the physiques. But I don't look at, I'm not trying to be politically correct. I really just look at it as different generations. Where I see the difference is on the amateur level, and I can unequivocally state that the amateur level is nothing now compared to what it used to be. Now we could have a real interesting discussion on that, but at the pro level, I just look at as different eras. The judges picked winners who were bigger, so the bodybuilders tried to become bigger. You can't blame them. That was the standard that was awarded. So that's what they did, right? So, I personally like the little smaller and tighter look, which might surprise people because I was a short, bigger guy myself. But I'd rather look like Flex Wheeler than look like me. So, but at the pro level, I just think it's different generations. I think that all these generations had great champions. I trained with Brandon Curry this weekend, and that guy is an absolutely unbelievable guy. He's an awesome guy. And so that's kind of how I see the pro level. The national level, man, that's where it's way different, completely different.
So Brandon is a great guy. Obviously, he's a current Mr. Olympia. So how do you feel, and how do you think he feels about people throwing shade at him? Guys like Dorian Yates and Ronnie Coleman on the record saying that in their time he wouldn't be placed in top 6 or top 5, whatever.
Brandon, he doesn't. He's very mature. So he's not sitting there, saying, no, he's not getting into these arguments. Brandon internalizes. And if you know Brandon, he's a very intelligent man. So Brandon also knows that he has to get better. And what I like about him is his mindset. His mindset is he still can get a lot better, and he knows that. And that's what I like. That's when I saw him, I was curious to see kind of just how he was mentally, just being the champion and all that. And kind of the overriding theme I got from him was, I'm the champ, but I know I got to get better, and I'm going to get better. I didn't sense any entitlement from him at all. So I think what you're going to see with Brandon is he's going to continue to get better. So I don't think the comments that people make about him, I mentioned it to him. I said, I did an interview with him, and I said, you hear all these comments, right? And he said, yeah, absolutely. But he's not losing any sleep over it. He's just taking it in. He's internalizing. He's training hard, and he knows he's got to get better, which is what a champion does.
How do you, when you hear comments like when people like Dorian make a comment like that, or Ronnie Coleman, or any other bodybuilder or blogger, when they voice their opinion, at what point do you think it's hate, and at what point do you think it's opinion? Like, how do you look at the bodybuilding industry when you hear these comments? Do you look at it as people hating, or do you look at it as they're just being honest? What do you say about that?
Well, so here's the tricky thing. I like to look at Dorian. Dorian had a couple of years where he was just phenomenal. He blew everybody's doors off. But there were a couple of years when he didn't, where his wins were kind of questionable. But the guy has earned the right to have an opinion. And if someone says John Meadows sucks, okay, that's your opinion. I'm not going to go cry about it. I don't know that it's I think he really thinks that the people in this era would not place well in his era. And it is a very good question. I mean, you look at a top in shape Sean Ray, even at 210 pounds, I still think Sean Ray could potentially be battling for a top spot at his best in today. And that's not a knock on the guys today. That's just saying how good Sean was. You look at Kevin LeBron at his best. He could probably, at his best, do pretty well today. So I think the guys are being honest, and I can see where they're coming from. I don't think they're just hating. I saw Ronnie's interview where he was just kind of laughing at their condition. And, I think the guys now, I think people don't understand condition. I think people think condition and they think like Rich Gaspari, strided glutes, shredded. The guys are really lean today. There's just so many chemicals involved. They don't quite have the muscle separation. They're lean. Like if you did a body fat test on them, they're not going to be fat. They're going to be 4% body fat, 4.5% body fat. They're not fat. It's just a different look. And that's just from the chemicals. I don't want to say just from the chemicals. That's partially responsible. I think the other thing responsible is all the excessive eating. But that was dictated by, bigger guys being champions. But I will say this, you look at Phil Heath. At his best, he's shredded glutes. I mean, so you can't say the guys nowadays aren't in shape. Like, you look at Phil Heath at his best winning the Olympias, you can't tell me he's not in shape and shredded. He absolutely is shredded. So, when Jay Cutler was winning, he's absolutely shredded. The guy has striations in the vastus lateralis on the side of his leg that you could put quarters in. They're so deep. So, the guys are still lean now. It's just a different look. And that's what I meant earlier when I said it's a different era. I don't think the guys are all of a sudden lazy. I know a lot of the top guys. They're not lazy. They don't just sit around. There have been lazy guys in the past. Paul Dillett was lazy. He's one of the biggest guys ever to hit the stage. He's very known for being lazy. He'd probably admit it if you ask him, right? So, the difference now is now you have social media and things like this, like we're talking. So a lot of this stuff gets attention brought to it. Well, back in my day, back in the 90s, I'd be at World Gym in Columbus, and the guys would come in, and you could see him train, and you'd be, okay, this guy doesn't train real hard. He's got 23-inch arms, but he's doing 25-pound dumbbell curls. And this guy over here, man, this guy's training like an animal. So that was the only way you could tell. Like, you had to just see people train. Whereas now everybody's got, they're talking, they're on Instagram and all this stuff. So there's been lazy people from every generation, and there's been hard workers from every generation.
I was going to ask you, John. So what is the responsible way to be a bodybuilder these days? Because obviously there's a lot of different trainers, right? And there's a lot of guys that bodybuild. And if you talk to any one of them, they say, well, I check my blood all the time. I'm good. I'm doing the right thing. But then I heard from somebody just the other day, and he basically said that, your blood only shows half of the actual results. Like, what's the right way to be a bodybuilder today? Especially for the younger people that are listening right now. You've been in this industry your whole life. You know what I mean? Like, what's the responsible way to do this? Honestly,
The blood work is simply a first step, and there's steps beyond that. Let me give you an example. So, people take a bunch of, let's say, Anavar or Winstrol tabs, so their HDL starts to go down. So, okay, now that my HDL is down, now maybe I'm at a higher risk to develop heart disease. Maybe that's happening, maybe it's not. So the next step is, like, for example, something I did was I got a calcium score test done on my heart. It's easy to sit and say my blood work looks good. Everybody says that. But they don't always show what's going on. So I actually got a calcium score test done. People can say, no, my kidneys are fine, my ejection fraction is fine, blah, blah, blah. Well, if you get a kidney scan, you can actually get it looked at. Like, you can tell what's really going on. So blood work is good, but there's another level to it. And guess what? One of the big things that gets people is high blood pressure. That's not in blood work. That's a cuff around your arm, or, there's other ways to do it now, but that's really what a lot of guys are suffering from. They're losing kidney function. That's probably the number one thing, the most common thing. And actually, I think the second most dangerous thing would probably be the diuretics. We see people die after shows. It's happened a lot in the last couple of years. And that's why. It's because of this crazy electrolyte pattern that's all messed up from all the excessive diuretics. So, the blood work is a good start, but that doesn't tell you the whole story.
Mm-hmm. So what's the right way to be a bodybuilder? Are you supposed to get a coach or guru and just kind of like check everything with him? Like, what are you supposed to be doing? Let's say you're 18 years old and you want to be a bodybuilder. What are you supposed to be doing?
Ideally, so I'm real lucky. Dr. Serrano is my doctor. He's, you could make a case he's a top doctor in the world. I'm lucky. Ideally, you could find a doctor that really understands this stuff. It's hard, though. Not all doctors are open to discussing this. Some of them are still in the dark ages and think if you take testosterone, you're going to have a heart attack and die. So number one, a good doctor is better than any guru out there, including myself. So that's where you really want to start. And, if that doesn't work, then you're probably just going to have to seek out somebody who's pretty intelligent, who reads blood work, who understands what AST and ALT elevation is. And just because it's a little high, that could just be from training. There's a lot of basic stuff they need to understand. Creatinine might just be a little high, but if it hits this number, then okay, maybe we need to be a little careful, what have you. But I think you start with trying to find an educated doctor. That's not always possible. So then you got to try to find somebody who knows the process, who's maybe worked with doctors. Some of the coaches now do, some don't, but that's, to me, I started working with Dr. Serrano in 1999. So I've had 21 years with him. I've got a stack of blood work about this big. And like I said, I still don't think that's the end all be all. There's other stuff that we've had tested and done. But you got to find a good doctor. It's just hard, man, because some of them they're in the dark ages. They really are. Let me tell you this. I think this is kind of interesting. The only thing that ever really screwed my blood work up was acetaminophen. I mean, when I was getting ready for Arnold Classic, I took some acetaminophen for 2 weeks, and that's the highest my liver enzymes had ever been in my entire life. And so the doctors don't always, you just got to find the right one. That's my point.
Now you, from what I read, you had a rare colon disease, right? At some point, you went through a very difficult situation, a health
Yes.
scare.
Yeah.
How old were you?
It was 2005.
Mm-hmm.
So 32 years old. I was getting ready for the Mr. USA, and I was out doing my morning cardio, and my stomach was kind of hurting, and then the next day it would hurt a little bit worse, and it kept hurting more and more and more. And long story short, I did the USA. By that point, I couldn't eat. Like I was eating like 1 ounce of chicken and one tablespoon of oatmeal would be a meal for me because it was so bad. The pain was so bad. I competed in the USA and I got back and I thought, okay, everything's going to be cool now. It was all contest related. It was stress related. So I got back on a Sunday. Monday morning, I went to see Dr. Serrano because he thought I might have mercury poisoning actually. And as soon as I walked into the office, he just looked at me and he said, call the ambulance. So the ambulance came and I was in and out of the emergency room, and they were telling me really, really dumb stuff like, oh, he's just constipated. That's the only thing wrong. But I had a disease called idiopathic myointimal hyperplasia of the mesenteric vein, which means I had a vein, we'll say, in my colon that was a diseased vein. So blood couldn't get through it. So blood kept coagulating until the vein literally burst. And luckily, when that happened, I was in a hospital. So they rushed me right into emergency surgery as blood was just pouring out of me, and I woke up with no colon. So from 2005 on, I had no colon. I ended up having a lot of surgeries. My abdominal muscles are literally sewn together to hold them together. So I mean, I think it's a kind of a cool story, right? I got my pro card after that. So I certainly had a little.
What was the cause of that?
Well, the word idiopathic means they don't know where it came from. They didn't know what it was until after the fact. They kept saying I had colitis. And I said, I don't have colitis. Like I'm literally not presenting one single symptom of colitis. I don't know what it is, but I know it's not colitis. They said, well, maybe it's ischemic colitis, which is a lack of blood flow. Maybe, but I didn't feel like it was colitis. So anyways, they took a piece of the tissue, a biopsy, they sent it to the Mayo Clinic. And the Mayo Clinic at the time said they had 9 cases on file of it or 11 cases on file, but they knew exactly what it was. And then when I looked it up and I read like the site, like what happens, it was dead on. I was like, that's it. That's exactly how I felt. All 7 of those things on that list is exactly where I was. So we didn't find it out until after the fact. And they had done, man, you wouldn't believe. I could give you an hour's long worth of tests they'd done on me, and they couldn't figure it out until they sent the actual tissue to the Mayo Clinic.
So how did you finally get over it fully? I mean, how do they fix it?
Well, I don't have a colon. I don't have a colon, so I don't have a diseased colon anymore. So your colon is your large intestine, and what it does is, as you eat, food goes in your stomach. Your stomach, then sends it to your small intestine, and your small intestine absorbs a lot of the vitamins and minerals and nutrients, and then it goes into, it's kind of a watery, and then it goes in your colon, and your body hydrates. It takes the water out. It hydrates you. It absorbs water and absorbs salt. And so I don't have that process. So what that means is I'm very prone to dehydration. So I have to always make sure I'm hydrated. I use a little bit of sea salt on a lot of my meals. So I have to think a little bit more about what I'm doing. And, for the first 3 or 4 years, I had never got cramps in my life. And for the first 3 or 4 years after that, I'd, do one set of calf raises and my calves would cramp. I'd do a set of bicep curls and my biceps would cramp. So it took a little while for it to normalize. It's still not normal, but I can deal with it now.
It's amazing they got a pro card after this, dealing with something like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's, a lot of people say, they've had adversity, and then I'll read like he pulled his tricep. I'm like, man, that's not adversity, but but I'm not mad that it happened. I had some of the scars on my stomach surgically removed, and I actually had a surgeon volunteer to do it for free. He said, I know you're a good bodybuilder. I'll take the scars off of you for free if you want. I said, I want to keep them, man, because it reminds me, when something like that happens, you figure out very quickly how precious your life is, how precious your friends are, how precious your family is. So it's a reminder to me that, man, I'm human. There are other more important things around. So I kept those scars, and that's how I think about it.
There's a saying in the industry basically that all bodybuilders that obviously choose to go the enhanced route in their bodybuilding, they all dealing with health issues, and the older they get, the more it comes out basically. So they have enlarged hearts, kidney problems, liver problems. Something is wrong with basically all of them. Would you agree or disagree with that?
I can't agree with that because I have no evidence to know that every single older bodybuilder has issues. I know plenty that don't. Well, I shouldn't say that. I don't have evidence that they're perfect either. I don't know. I mean, the longer you do things, the more risk you're at. But I also know guys that have taken like testosterone for 30 years and they have no issues. There's a difference between taking enough to to elicit an effect versus just pile drive in huge doses. And, that is going to catch up with you. And that's going to catch up with you. And I do think in the next couple of years, you're going to see more people having major problems, specifically with their kidneys. Because the one thing I will say, and people can disagree with me on this all they want, I do think the coaching now promotes much heavier drug use than it did previous. Not to say that all the guys in the earlier generations took little to nothing. I'm not saying that. Of course, there was the Nassers that took a lot, but I've talked to a lot of those guys. And they're still very healthy, and they would tell me, this is what I did, this is what I did. And you look at what the guys do now. I'll give you an example. Like you look at one of the popular drugs back in the 90s was an ampule called Parabolin that was in France. It was made by a company called Negma. It came in these 1.5 milliliter ampules. Each milliliter had 76 milligrams of trenbolone in it. Okay. Most of the guys would take the last 6 weeks, 2 ampules of that a week. So that's 76 times 2. The hardcore guys would take 3. So, now we're up around 225, 230 milligrams a week. And now you got these young coaches telling guys, you need to take a gram of tren every week for 12 weeks straight. That's common in some of these younger coaches. So you got these younger coaches that I don't know if they're truly that stupid and they don't understand that you can get real far with a little bit lower dose, or whether they're so dead set on trying to be famous that they're willing to just kill people in the process. I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. I don't know if they're so hungry to get a reputation, to be a guru, or it's just they're truly that dumb. I don't really know the difference. I will say this too, everybody's a little different. Some people need a little bit more, some people need a little bit less. But what I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt is there are a lot of people out there that could do just fine if they back their doses down a little bit. I feel very good about saying that.
Mm-hmm. How do you feel about natural bodybuilding? There's a few organizations that basically, they do drug testing, mandatory drug testing. There's a thing called Natural Olympia. We're actually making a film right now covering that side of the industry. Yeah. How do you feel about it? But then, when I talk to a lot of the guys, from the mainstream bodybuilding, they say, well, we don't want to see that. You know what I mean? Like, how do you look at, what is your take on it?
Well, if you check out my YouTube channel, you'll see a lot of natural videos because I like to talk about the natural side of this. I trained many years natural. I had a 500-pound squat naturally as a teenager. I had a really good base. So there's a lot that I like to talk about with natural bodybuilding. So first of all, are they really natural? I mean, at the Team U for many years, they had guys winning that were taking testosterone suspension all the way up till the end, taking growth hormone all the way through, things that you couldn't detect. They knew when to kind of pull. Yeah, I mean, I think everybody knows that. So just because someone says it's a natural show doesn't mean it really is. There's ways to beat a polygraph test that's been written and publicized in many different publications. So the first question is, are they really natural? That's the first question. And what I see in a lot of the natural organizations is what I really like seeing is I see guys sometimes that are shredded. I see some guys that are just as shredded as the IFBB guys. They're just not real big, but they're shredded. And I think to myself, the first thing that goes through my head is that is damn impressive because they're not throwing T3 and Clen and all this stuff. But they're, a pro bodybuilder can just say, oh, I'll just take more T3 or I'll just take more Clen and I'll burn the fat off. A natural guy can't do that. He has to actually think. And this is one of the reasons why I respect a lot of the coaches that coach natural guys, because they have to think. They have to actually solve problems. They can't just throw drugs at something. So I have a tremendous respect for natural bodybuilding. At the same time, it's very unrealistic to tell naturals that they can be as big as IFBB guys. It just ain't going to happen. But you can still look awesome. You can still look fantastic. You can still get chiseled. You just won't be as big. But, that's provided they really are natural. So I think when you go to some of these natural shows, you got to kind of wonder, I don't know about that. I don't know if that guy's really natural. How does he have gyno when he's natural? I know some people have it naturally, but it just makes you wonder, right?
Mm-hmm. No, that's a great point, actually. You're right about that. Do you ever or often have kids come up to you in the gym, like, teenagers, asking you to advise them on different chemicals and enhancements? Does that happen? Does it ever happen to you?
Not as much as you'd think. It used, I used to have it happen. I think it was when I trained in the evenings when the gym was packed. I kind of go in now when the gym's dead. That's what I've done the last 7-8 years. I used to go in the evenings. Everybody gets off work. They're all in there doing their chest or their arms at 5:30. And I used to get guys, hey man, and it was always funny. They'd always ask me the same thing: how much trend should I take? And is it okay if I, take a gram or a gram and a half a test? Like I always would hear that, and I would say, who told you to take a gram a test? Well, I read in so and so's website that that's the starting dose. Like really? Like have you ever taken anything before? No. I do get guys that say that, and I just tell them to do their research. Like I think people should be free to do anything they want personally. If you're going to do that, just at least take some time and educate yourself. I was very, very anti-drug for, the first 8 years that I lifted. I was one of the guys that read Death in the Locker Room, if you remember that. That's an old book, Bob Golan book. And I thought, oh man, if I take a handful of Winstraw, my hair's going to fall out and I'm going to die. I thought that. I really thought that. But as I continued to do more research, I thought, you know what? Maybe the side effects are exaggerated, and maybe there's a way that, I don't want to say it's side effect free, but maybe there's a way you can do this and come out on the other side. So I just encourage them to. I don't give drug advice to these kids. I just encourage them, man, get educated. Bill Llewellyn has his books. Bill Llewellyn's books are fantastic. I would advise anybody to read those if they're just trying to do their basic research and understand what's going on.
There are quite a few people in the industry that are very open about their steroid use, and they give advice or manuals or how to do how to properly do it, videos online, whether it's on social media, YouTube, whatever, right? Do you think they should be censored by social media platforms like YouTube and Instagram and potentially banned?
Man, that is a great question, because I can see both sides of that. Part of me says, no, it's a free country, but part of me says that's absolutely a horrible thing to show kids that are 15, 16, 17 years old. Showing kids how to take shots and things like that, that's not my style, man. I don't think showing kids that is a good thing, but proper education is a good thing. So I think there's just got to be a way to do it where there's more education involved. And I don't have a good answer on how you do that. But pulling out a 5cc syringe and filling it full of tren and taking a shot and telling everybody how great it is, that's just not what. I got kids that are 11 years old. I don't want to see them watching that when they're 14, 15 years old and thinking, oh, that must be. So, I think if you have kids and you have a family, it probably impacts your views on that too, right? Because, so I tend more on the I don't like that. I think that's kind of where YouTube is going, right? It seems like YouTube is starting to censor a lot of that stuff.
They're starting to, yeah, absolutely. It's not what it used to be 5 years ago. Absolutely. It's changing progressively, yeah.
Yeah. I don't really have a problem with censoring that. Just make people get educated. Make them get educated. The problem with YouTube, and I love YouTube, by the way. I love YouTube. YouTube is the future. But the problem with it is, how do you disseminate through the information? I've got one guy telling me to do 26 sets for biceps. And like, I know that's ludicrous. But how does a kid know that? And my point is there's so much information out there. How do you know what's good? How do you know what's bad? And that's kind of where a good coach can come in handy. Many, many, many years of my career, I didn't have a coach because I just love to learn and figure stuff out on my own. But sometimes a coach can be very valuable, and they can kind of sift through that for you. This stuff over here, don't listen to that. This stuff over here is pretty good. You might want to put some time into that. That's where a coach can really help a young guy out, especially.
How do you feel about the not recent, but in the last few years, been a craze over vegan diet? What is your take on that? How do you feel about it?
Well, I'll tell you. So I'm a big animal guy, right? Mountain Dog that name came from Bernese Mountain Dogs. I used to show, I had my first Bernese Mountain Dog. I used to show her. I love animals. There are times when I eat meat, and honestly, I'm just being honest with you, I feel guilty, especially like eating bacon, because I know how smart pigs are. Pigs are incredibly intelligent. So I'll go a year without eating bacon, and then I'll eat some, and I'll be like, man, I feel guilty. So from the perspective of animal cruelty and the way they treat animals, I can get behind that. But when the argument becomes it's healthier for you, is a vegan diet healthier than going to Wendy's and getting those kind of hamburgers? Probably. But what about a grass-fed steak on an animal that's been raised a certain way? Like, now it gets interesting. It's a little different situation. You can't compare. You can't compare like what you'd get from McDonald's with what you'd get from a farm. Just based on how the animal's been fed, the antibiotics they've been given, blah, blah, blah. So, like you look at fish, wild fish and, versus like salmon that are farmed, and all the really bad stuff they feed them in their little pens. And anyway, so I don't think the information that's been given out about a vegan diet being healthier I think it's very misleading. And I think when they start talking about all these athletes that were vegans, they left out that a lot of them end up getting injured and have injuries. And you can Google that, and it'll show you. Like, you can just Google injured vegan athletes, and all these people they're claiming are so great are now injured, half of them. Was it the diet? I don't know. But you definitely have to be more careful. You have acids and what you might be missing and things like that. B12, iron. There's a lot of things you got to take into consideration. So my approach is I still do eat some meat. I have backed off a lot on it, but I haven't backed off because I thought eating 2 grass-fed steaks a week is going to kill me. It was more because I have a guilty conscience, man. I feel bad. So
that's interesting. What about keto diet? How do you feel about that? Do you think that's positive, healthy in bodybuilding lifestyle?
I think a keto diet. I think any kind of this. I don't know if fad diet is the right word. Any kind of diet type, I think, has its uses. I think to say that it works for everybody or it works for somebody all the time that's where I have an issue. So a keto diet can clearly do some good things for you physically, mentally. There's clearly some benefits to it. It could reduce your triglycerides. I mean, it can do all kinds of good stuff health-wise. But if you told me I'm going to put you on a keto diet, you're not getting any carbs, no way. I want no part of that. So I think the sustainability of a lot of these diet types, they're just not sustainable. Like, I'm not saying they're a bad diet. Then you look like a low-fat diet where people don't eat any fat. Like, if you want to do that for a little bit of a period before a contest, I get that. But if that's going to be your eating style, like for long term, you're probably going to have hormonal issues. You probably have some test issues. There's some things that are going to happen down the road. If you believe in a high carb diet, that can work great. If you're going to slam high carbs all the time, if you're in a caloric surplus all the time, at some point you're going to get a little bit insulin resistant, and that insulin resistance is kind of the root of all these degenerative diseases. So I'm in favor more of kind of a balanced macronutrient profile where you include enough healthy fats, enough carbs, enough protein, and then you just kind of tweak it from there. But I don't like to eliminate all carbs or eliminate all fat. I mean, I can see it for something like a bodybuilding show where that requires something extreme. But when it comes to just living your life, that's where it becomes, I have a problem with people saying, oh, this is the best diet ever. Well, it might be for you, but for the other 9 out of 10 people that would like to have a bowl of oatmeal, it's not for them, you know? So
do you usually measure all your meals as far as like, by grams, like how much grams in this, protein, like carbs, or do you do it by eye usually?
I do it all by eye unless I'm competing. If I'm competing, then I'm very precise. But if I'm not competing, I don't measure anything.
And then lastly, John, so, the big disappointment is that Sean Roden is not competing. He was supposed to compete at the Arnold, then they disinvited him or whatever, it was canceled, whatever. But obviously, he's being ostracized by the industry, you can say it that way. What is your take on that, and do you feel like he should have been they should have let him compete at the Arnold, at the Olympia, and other competitions potentially?
Is there anything going on with his court case? Like, I haven't heard anything.
Well, it's still pending, so it's
Yeah.
still in progress, so it wasn't resolved, obviously.
Well, I feel like, I mean, when all that stuff happened last year, there was always this, is he guilty? Is he not guilty? Everybody was like trying to figure out if he was guilty or not. And nobody really knows. There's only two people that knows. So we can speculate all we want, but whether it was consensual or whether it wasn't consensual. I've always had very positive interactions with Sean. They've always been very, very positive. And I don't see him, personally being that guy that would do something over the line. I don't personally see that, but I don't know. I wasn't there. I would say this though: if I could offer him some advice, it'd be just stop messing around with all these all these crazy women. So I think Sean was convicted without. I feel like he's being hammered a little too hard. He's never. I don't. It's so hard to say because if I was there, if you or I were there and we knew for sure something like that happened, then we would both be in agreement. I would think that that's not a good guy. Like, that's a very serious matter. And friend or not, I'm not going to support that kind of activity, right? I mean, raping someone is not. You don't support that. So, but we weren't there. Yeah, we weren't there. We don't know. So, for us to just automatically call him guilty, but. The other thing is at the end of the day, we all know this is a business. I mean, it is a business. And, if whoever's running the show thinks it sheds a negative light on them, it's their show. So, hey, I mean, who am I to tell them how to run their show? I may think he's being a little bit ostracized, probably a little, it's not real fair, but I'm also not going to say, to the Lorimers, you should let this guy in when it could have a negative repercussion for them too. So I see both sides of it. It's very unfortunate, man, because I just, Lee Haney, like people ask me who was the best Mr. Olympia. And, of course, Arnold has brought us, and you can't compare Arnold with anybody. He's on his own level. But I think of Lee Haney, like this guy was a class act. Like when you talk about the totality of the Olympian, his persona, how he was, how well he interacted with people. Lee, I mean, he got the key to the city, from the mayor. I mean, I've been waiting so long for a Mr. Olympia to come back that had class like that. And that's what we have with Brandon, by the way. That's one of the reasons why I really like Brandon. I see him kind of in that Lee Haney mold where he can bring the sport to positivity. So it just broke my heart hearing all this stuff about Sean because, I've been in this sport for 34 years and I just see it it's getting hammered. Like your top guy is a rapist, right? And that just hurts, man, because it just makes our sport look really bad. Whether he is or he isn't, it just makes the sport look bad. So, a lot of people talk about Phil, how he's cocky and all this stuff. And I don't know Phil, so I'm not going to say that. I don't know him. So for me, I just would like to see more people that carry themselves like a champion, like how Brandon does, like how Lee Haney did. And so Lee Haney to me will always be kind of the model. But anyways, I know I probably went off on a tangent there.
No. I appreciate the answer. And then I want to ask you the last thing about Granite. When you pick an influencer to represent your brand, right? What qualities do you look for? And would you rather sign somebody who is an influencer on social media, who doesn't necessarily have credibility in bodybuilding, but has a lot of views and a lot of engagement? Or would you sign somebody who is actually a credible bodybuilder that doesn't have the engagement? Like, how do you pick one versus the other?
It's not even close. It's a business. You have to generate revenue, and whoever is generating the revenue is who I'm going to look at first. And then you got to go down the kind of person they are. So I don't care if someone's a successful bodybuilder, because that doesn't translate to supplement sales. It doesn't. And these influencers, I think that's deceiving too. Just because, you take somebody who has 2 million followers and shows their butt all the time, doesn't mean those 2 million followers are actually going to buy anything from them. It doesn't mean they're actually going to influence. That influencer title is very misleading. We have a girl named Holly Mitchell that she doesn't have 1 million followers, but people listen to her. Like, she's a coach. She helps people. She has their best interest in mind. That's the kind of people I look for. If someone comes to me and says, hey, I won these 3 shows. Hey, congratulations, good job. It doesn't necessarily, or they have, I got 2 million followers. But then you look and you see no real interaction. You just see a picture of a butt and you see, 1 million horny guys, putting emojis up of pickles or whatever it is. So to me, it's true influence. It's true influence. Do people really respect what you have to say? Are people actually going to listen to you? That's what matters.
That's a great answer, John, because people come up to me all the time, and I'm sure they come up to you nonstop asking, how do we get signed, because everybody's looking for a contract, by a supplement company. And obviously the market changed a lot in the last 5 years. It's a completely different industry. And so, like you said, you really have to convert to sales, and that's the number one. That's the number one task you have to focus on.
That's right. It's a business. Businesses have to make money. Yep.
John, thanks so much, man. 51 minutes. Great interview, man. I appreciate it. We got to do it again soon, man.
Just let me know, man. I love talking. I could talk for hours.